Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is Dumitru Duduman, crackpot or prophet, or another way to say it is, do you see Dumitru Duduman's prophecy approaching? I do. If you watch us for a while, I think you'll probably agree, but I've got some new additional information for you today. Okay. First of all, Daniel chapter 7, verse 5 says, "And behold another beast, a second like unto a bear," which we believe is Russia, "raised itself up on one side," and it is true that most of Russia lives on the western side, the western one-third, I'll even say. The eastern two-thirds is pretty much pretty close to uninhabited. And then it says, "And it had three ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it." I believe that those are three nations that when Russia starts rampaging, and I think it started February 22nd of 22 when they invaded Ukraine, and it's not going to stop until it reaches Armageddon. Three ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, "Arise and devour much flesh." Now, Daniel and Revelation are pretty much not talking about the past. They use the past and history to point out what is coming in the future. So I don't think that this is talking about the people that the Russians have killed in the past, which is a bunch. I think it's talking about the people that they kill in the future. Warlike people. Now, and by the way, I'm not attacking the Russians. Matter of fact, I just hung up talking to my Russian buddy. That's my racquetball buddy, and him and I are great friends. So not all the Russians are bad people. Anyway, headline, Russia moves to withdraw from the plutonium agreement with the United States. I did not know about this. This is very interesting. So Russia's State Duma has approved a bill to formally withdraw from the plutonium management disposition agreement, a bilateral pact with the United States originally signed in 2000, updated in 2010. Now, here's the point. This move effectively ends the key remnant of Cold War-era arms control efforts aimed at reducing it means that they've got 34 metric tons. Okay, what's a metric ton? Well, your average car weighs probably around a ton, in that kind of a ballpark. If it's a big, heavy car, it might reach a whole ton. Maybe some of them even maybe 2 tons, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So, 34 metric tons of excess plutonium. Okay, now what's plutonium? Well, I'm not an expert on warheads, but as I recall, that was the bigger of the two bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima. And plutonium is actually more powerful than uranium, if I remember correctly. So it's powerful stuff. Either way, that's my point. 34 metric tons of it. Now, this probably means that this is up to, close to, or maybe even already reached weapons grade. What does that mean? It says that they can make 17,000 nuclear warheads with the amount that America and Russia claims that they have. And they had an agreement to basically destroy this. But now Russia said, we're not going to destroy it. Okay, now what does that mean? It probably means that we're going to make some more warheads, as if 8,000 warheads from Russia, which they claim they own, is not enough. Now, okay, hang on. Okay, so try to imagine the top 100 cities in America. Get one of the top most powerful warheads dropped on them. Those warheads today are 350 times bigger than what hit anything in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So what does that mean? It means that Russia doesn't need 8,000. If Russia just had 100 or even 200, they could still destroy America in 1 hour. But they have 8,000, and now they're saying, no, I'm not going to destroy the excess plutonium, meaning I'm going to start making more nuclear weapons, or I'm going to give it to my buddies and help them to turn it into nuclear weapons. Either way, this is really bad. Russia can now choose to provide its allies with the plutonium to make their own weapons, all against the United States. Now, this is not directly, but indirectly, it points to something. Ukraine oil and gas reserves are now below 50%, and the shutdown The Russians could shut down multiple electrical substations in retaliation for Ukrainian attacks on Russia, oil and gasoline refineries, all having to do with the Tomahawk weapons. In other words, Russia's mad. They are mad that Trump has said that he might send the Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, and we're going to talk about that. Russia says momentum toward Ukraine peace deal has now been largely exhausted. Why? Over one small sentence, about 5 words, where Trump said he's thinking that he might just send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. All right, what does that mean? All right, we'll talk about it. Giving Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine would be an absolute insane thing to do, and I would say it's a lot worse than that. So, if you're needing gold, or if you have a pile of cash someplace, IRA, 401k, or in a bank, or in a bank vault, or in the mattress, wherever, my suggestion is 800-200 gold. Call them. 800-200 gold, and just see if they can help you. You don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose your life savings in some kind of a financial crash, okay? 800-200 gold. All right. Now, back to the article. So they say, allowing the Ukrainians to have such missiles would put us right on the brink of nuclear war. This is what the Russians say. And to supply the delivery platforms, in order to do that, and to guide the missiles, all has to be done by America. So they're American missiles guided by American satellites to hit Russia. So Russia can easily say, should those be delivered, and should one of those Tomahawk missiles arrive on Russian soil, just one of them, now all of a sudden Russia can turn to the world and say, wait a minute, we attacked them second. They drew first blood. You remember? Okay, so that's what I think Russia's looking for. So anyway, the most time Tomahawk cruise missiles can carry conventional warheads, but they were originally made to send nuclear warheads, meaning if Russia looks up and Ukraine has fired a Tomahawk missile, Russia can now say, wait a minute, that could be nuclear, and so they've got the right and the authority to attack America with their nuclear weapons. So this is a colossal mistake that Trump is doing, in my opinion. So the Russians possess the best anti-missile systems in the world. But it is inevitable that Tomahawk cruise missiles would get through because they're designed to be extremely evasive. So how would you respond if cruise missiles were heading to Washington, D.C., and you knew that they could have nuclear weapons on them? Well, what would we do? We would attack. That's the only thing we can do. Well, that's what the Russians are saying. If you send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, it's basically going to start a war. That's essentially what they're saying. Then on Sunday, Vladimir Putin warned again that relations between our two countries will be destroyed if the U.S. provides Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles, and I agree. Trump, if you're listening, absolutely, positively do not send those Tomahawk missiles to NATO. Do not let them go to Ukraine. So it goes on to say, Putin said it'll be a quantitatively new stage of escalation, and Russia says now listen, this is important, watch right here. Their response will be tough, ambiguous, measured, and asymmetrical. What does that mean? So I looked that up. So here's what it means. Russia's giving, this would be giving Russia the justification to the world to retaliate and destroy America in 1 hour. So I looked it up. There's 4 scriptures in Revelation that says America is destroyed in 1 hour, and there they are. You can pause and read them if you want to. Let me show you something, though. So here's what the Tomahawk missiles mean. They require specialized launchers. Ukraine lacks these, providing them would need U.S. adaptation, raising escalation risks, and it could disrupt Russia's energy sector. In other words, these missiles could do a lot of damage in Russia. That's what they're saying. So then I looked all that up. Okay, so the stakeholder is on the left, the stance is in the middle, and the key quote or the detail is on the right. Now, here's the point I want you to look at, to understand what it's saying. And by the way, I pulled this out of Grok. So, U.S. or Trump administration is the one we're talking about here. The stance is they're considering possibly sending the Tomahawk missiles. Trump says, I want to find out what they're going to be aimed at. Well, don't send them, period. If you'll just call me, I'll tell you, don't send them. Now, to Ukraine, this would enable them to strike into deep Russian territory. But here's the way Russia looks at it. They're strongly opposed, and they have issued threats, don't do it. It would escalate to a new stage of escalation, requires adequate response. Ukraine can't launch them without U.S. help. It takes the satellites. Yeah, they can launch them, but they're steered by satellites. Ukraine doesn't have any satellites. That would be America that has the satellites. So, Russia has repeatedly warned that American-made, American-aimed, satellite-guided American attack missiles hits Russia, and they will do a tough, ambiguous, measured, and asymmetrical response. So I looked up. What does that mean? Tough, ambiguous, measured, and asymmetrical. Here's what Grok says it is. Tough, ambiguous, measured, and asymmetrical says, if I can get to it here. Okay, tough is no backing down from red lines. Russia portrays itself as unafraid of confrontation. That means that they would use direct military countermeasures. Now, what are direct military countermeasures? I'll tell you what that is. That's rolling submarines up on our beaches and hitting us in less than 60 seconds from launch to detonation all up and down the east and western seaboard, just like several prophets have been shown. I'll show you one of them in a minute. It's also preemptive strikes. Ambiguous means it's vague, it's unpredictable, they're not telling us exactly what they're going to do. I will tell you what the prophets say they do. They don't shoot missiles like this, okay, that can more easily be shot down. We can't shoot those down either. But instead, what the prophets say is they saw the submarines practically on our beaches. 60 seconds from launch to detonation. I don't care what kind of iron dome you have, you can't shoot those down. 60 seconds from launch to detonation. By the time you discover that they're launched, your head isn't barely even off the pillow, okay? Measure, what does that mean? It's restraint to avoid full-scale war, but scale to match the provocation. But I don't believe that Russia is going to scale the provocation or the response back. I think that if Trump does send the Tomahawks, and if the Tomahawks actually reach Russian soil, I think what you will do, I think you will hear the Russians complaining and squealing like a pig caught under a gate, but they won't do anything until the point that they're ready to take out America. And when is that? Well, probably when there's an internal revolution in America, started by the communists, when some of the people start fighting against the government, when they've got Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, probably Venezuela, and North Korea, and they've got all of their buddies all in secret alliance to all launch their weapons all on the same day. Mexico comes up through the Mexican border, all attacking us along with Mexico and all of the southern states there, all the central, all the way down to Panama. Panama's mad at us. Okay, we took the Panama Canal back, and we made a lot of people mad. Now, if a few Tomahawks hit Russian targets, Russia might limit retaliation to, no, they're not. They're not. It will be a full, I think that's, at least that's what Stanislav Lunev, if I can say his name again, Stanislav Lunev, the highest-ranking Russian military officer ever to defect from Russia to America, told me as we sat at lunch back in 1998, he's stunned. He said, you don't understand. The whole point of Russia is to destroy America. He explained that that's what they've been teaching their children since birth, that the objective of Russia is to destroy America. So they are waiting for their moment when the Father God, allows them to hit us. So when you see that God has given given Russia silent submarines, hypersonic missiles, weapons programs that we can't stop, and in retaliation, we can't make anything get through. They have scalar wave. They can knock out anything in the air, on the ground, on the sea, under the sea, any place on the globe, anytime they want to, and we don't have it. So God has arranged the Russians to outgun us militarily, and that's where we are. Now let me read the last thing. What's asymmetrical? Well, non-mirror image retaliation uses Russia's strengths instead of matching U.S. conventional power. In other words, I think what it's saying is that we're not going to hit back immediately. You start hitting Russian territory, killing Russians with American weapons. We won't do anything about it immediately, but we will wait until exactly the right time, and then in 1 hour, we will destroy America. Why? Because that's what they were raised up to do. Then what do? Then Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico go against America. Then God raises up China, Japan, many of the nations. They go against the Russians. It's Armageddon. They back the Russians to the gates of Paris where they sign a peace treaty, but they make the Russians their leader. With the Russians as the leader, all the world goes down to attack Israel. It's Armageddon. That's when it's Armageddon. And Jesus returns in the clouds and defeats the armies of the earth, straight out of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Now, let me read for you what I think is one of the most important visions that anybody's had. And I first met Henry Gruver. Let's see, Prophecy Club started in 93. I met him in 91 or 92. We had Henry Gruver in to speak at the Full Gospel Businessman up in Omaha. Let's see, that would have been 89. So I met him in 1989. And we had him stay in our home. He came to speak to the Full Gospel Businessman. The guy loved him. They wouldn't even. His voice got so worn out from talking to the men. He couldn't even talk. We were giving him lemonade and stuff like that. Please keep talking. Please keep talking. People just love this guy. He's gone to be with the Lord now. Anyway, so this is what he saw. Now let me back up and tell you who he is, because you need to believe this. Again, we had him in our home. I think he probably made more DVDs for Prophecy Club than anybody. You can watch them at Watch Prophecy Club. Just go to watchprophecyclub.com, type in Gruver, Gruver, watchprophecyclub.com, type in Gruver, and all of a sudden I think it's 6 or 7 DVDs he made for us. Awesome guy, awesome. Anyway, so what he did was walk and pray over cities. He walked and prayed over 500 cities all around the globe, not just America, but all around the globe. When he was done, he'd go up to a high point. He'd raise his hands over the city and reclaim the city for God. And many times, revival would break out. He's told stories of walking into a gang-infested place. He didn't care. The Lord's with him. And the gang, remember, he'd had guns up to his throat, knives to his throat. The guy with the knife starts crying. The guy with the gun pulls the trigger and it doesn't fire. Many amazing. It's like, wow. I mean, as a matter of fact, I told Henry, and my wife and I agree, that when we're in the presence of Henry Gruver, we felt like we were closer to Jesus than with any other person we'd ever met. In other words, in our opinion, I'll tell you another story. In our opinion, he walked and talked and acted more like Jesus than any other person we'd ever met. I'll tell you a story. So this will give you an example of the kind of spirit that was in Henry. We were in, I don't know, some little town out in western Nebraska. He'd been ministering out there. We took him to minister. I think it was a Prophecy Club meeting. Anyway, we stopped at a little restaurant, and we had probably 6-8 tables in it. And he had his son there, and it was me and Leslie and him and his son. We sat down at a little booth there, and we're having, I believe it was dinner. And his son, I don't have any. Okay, so let's say that my little bear of honey is a ketchup bottle. His son picked up the ketchup bottle, didn't check to make sure that the lid was on tight, and he was going to shake it. He went like that. When he did, that ketchup was like, and the ketchup went just like this. It went right here. It went in his ear and right across. You couldn't have hit him any more perfectly in the very, very worst way. That ketchup hit Henry Good just like that. Now, I know how I would have reacted if my son had done that to me, and it wouldn't have been as calm and loving as Henry reacted. So I was watching Henry. I wanted to see how he was going to handle this, because I thought I would probably not be nice. Henry went, oh. He starts getting the ketchup out of his ear, ketchup off his glasses, out of his eyes and everything, very calmly. Of course, we're handing him napkins. He finally wipes off his face, gets the ketchup out of his ear. I mean, it filled his ear. So, so Henry very calmly picked up the ketchup bottle and he says, son, he said, if you're going to shake the ketchup bottle, be sure and make sure that the lid is on tight before you go shaking it like that. It's very calm. And Leslie and I are looking at each other and saying, wow. I mean, I don't know anybody that just got ketchup thrown in their ear and thrown across their face and their eyeglasses and their eyes that would be so calm. But that was Henry, an amazing guy. Okay, so he was out walking one day, and this is what he was shown. He was shown a vision of the future of America. He says, I was in Wales on December the 14th, 1986, and I went upon the top of the Eagle Tower in the Carnarvon Castle. All of a sudden, I was above the earth, looking down on the earth like a globe. He saw a vision. I saw all of these massive amount of ships and airplanes coming out of this outlet out of Norway. They headed down between the United States and Europe, literally covered the whole Atlantic. I looked over the globe at the western United States, and I saw coming out of the United States these radio communication towers. I saw the jagged lines like the draw to show the communications were coming out, but all of a sudden, they began to sprinkle down on the earth like dust. And I thought, oh no, they're not getting through. They don't know what's happening. They're totally oblivious. Then I began to see all these submarines emerging from under the surface. I was surprised at how close they were to our borders. They were in our territorial waters, and in other places it looked like they were on our beaches. The missiles took less than 60 seconds from launch to detonation. I saw one hit Seattle, Bellevue, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, Miami, and Tampa. I saw 6 nuclear blasts that just literally leveled everything. I cried out and said, oh God, when will this be and what will be the sign of its coming? I heard an audible voice speak from behind me and say, when Russia opens her doors and lets the masses go, the free world will occupy themselves with transporting, housing, feeding, and caring for the masses, and will let down their weapons and cry peace and safety. Then sudden destruction will come. Then is when it will come. Now, the point is, we are rapidly moving toward these days. I'd suggest that you ask Jesus into your heart. I suggest you share this with all of your friends that you love, that you want to see get prepared, because as I just said, I showed you evidence. This is getting very, very close, my friends, very close. If you don't want to lose your life's savings, if you have an IRA or a 401k, the thing to do is call 800-200-GOLD. 800-200-GOLD. These folks are Christians, and they specialize in helping people not lose their life savings in the event of a stock market crash and things like that. Look, most of the 401ks, most of the IRAs are in paper, backed by paper, and as Lindsey Williams says, if it's in paper, it's worth the paper it's written on. You can lose it all. 1-800-200-GOLD. 800-200-GOLD. Hey, give them a call. Doesn't hurt, doesn't cost you anything. See if they can give you some good advice. If you want to be on the end of making money, gold and silver is preserving your money. If you want to be on the end of making money, then you might want to call prophecyclubcrypto.com, or actually go to it, or call that number in the bottom right corner. Ask them about crypto if you're in the position where you can make money. When the suitcase nukes, I didn't say if, I said when the suitcase nukes go off, if you want your car to start, if you want your computers and your refrigerators and things like that, anything with a computer chip to work, you want to have one of these from EMPShield.com. EMPShield.com. And they have videos up there. It takes about 10 minutes to put on. It's not complicated at all. And if you use the word prophecy, promo code prophecy, you get a $50 discount, and it helps your Prophecy Club.